Okay, welcome to part 2 and 3 of chapter 2. So here we have some information continuing about what choices we could make for food and for good health. This is just helping you define what is undernutrition and overnutrition, this aspect. So here we have malnutrition. These are all part of the overarching malnutrition. So that's just when we have failing health because of some choices or foods we've taken. Maybe we don't have any choice in what we take, but it can cause either overnutrition, in which we get more calories, maybe even more nutrition, like taking supplements, taking protein powders, that could be overnutrition, or undernutrition, again, as we mentioned, because of lack of a particular vitamin or mineral, lack of B12 if we're vegan and not getting enough, or iron because of our diet. So we could be at any of these situations. Even if we're normal weight, we could still be in the condition of over or undernutrition. It doesn't necessarily mean underweight. Um, so what we're looking here is measuring like what our nutritional state is. Like how do we determine where we're at? So usually we use this kind of ABCD method. It helps remember all the different aspects. So when you're doing an assessment of somebody, you don't just look at where they are right now. You might want to look back too to see what their history has been, dietary history, and their health history. But the ABCDE is a good way to remember. You'll use this over and over if you do any kind of assessment. The first thing is you'll look at the anthropometric. This is easy to remember if you think of the Latin anthro means man, metric is measuring. So you're measuring weight, you're measuring fat content, you're measuring um, abdominal waist size. So you're actually checking height and weight. So that's the first thing you could do to see where someone's at, especially children. It's important to check their weights and check their growth over pretty often because there could be some limitations in their diet where they aren't growing properly. Biochemical measurements, so this is where you do the blood work, check the urine to see how the nutrient levels are. Clinical examination is just really just looking at a person. If you look at someone, do they look tired? Do they look bent over? If it's an older person, have they changed since their last visit? Has there been substantial weight loss or weight gain? Dietary analysis is what you're doing with your 3-day recall. Other ways you could do analysis is you could do a food frequency test where you just see how often in the last week did you have dark greens? How many times last week did you drink milk? You might look at something like a food frequency. You could do a 7-day recall. You could do a 24-hour recall to get a quicker view, like what did you eat yesterday? That gives you a pretty good picture of someone's diet, but it's not as accurate. The more days, the more accurate. So we've picked a 3-day recall for this class. It's kind of in the middle. And then you can look at the economic evaluation. Like, do they have sources of food? Do they have money? Do they have ways to get the food? Do they have someone preparing food for them? If an older person, can they get up and get their food? There's a lot of things to look at in their social situation to see how equipped are they to be able to feed themselves. So that's an assessment's really important to do. And then here you can look at the standard. So now that we have their nutrient content, what is the standard for that person? This is what the RDA is all about. And you'll also see this AI. So some vitamins and minerals, we don't know exactly from the research what the right amount is. And I think somebody in this class is doing a paper on sodium content because sodium doesn't have an RDA, it just has an adequate intake. So based on the research, we think we need about 2,400 milligrams. But it depends. If you have high blood pressure, you would want to cut back on that. So looking at these dietary RDAs, there's a little umbrella. They've now called the whole group of these estimations called dietary reference intake. So these are the references we use for labeling, for doing assessments. It just gives us a basis. So there's RDAs which are proven, at least as far as the research we have, how much we need for every age group. The same thing with AI. Those are estimations based on research. The upper limit, so there's some nutrients that are dangerous to be taken in larger amounts, like iron. Any more than 35 milligrams a day could be deleterious and cause stomach bleeding. And then this is your estimated energy requirement. So how much calories do you need? These are all based on individual circumstances. It's different for everybody. So the RDA then is the amount of a nutrient that would meet your needs of most people. Maybe a couple, 2% of people wouldn't meet their needs. Maybe they have, like people that have cystic fibrosis need a lot higher vitamin content and fat content because of their illness. So obviously they need different levels of nutrients. And so the nutrient deviation. So there's a little picture that shows how they determined like where this falls in the sequence. So usually the RDA is that amount that fulfills most people's needs. The upper limit is obviously the point that's too much. You don't want to go over that. This is probably a little safe um, area, but generally you try to count that number as being too much. And then the AI is somewhere between the RDA and the upper limit or the tolerable upper limit. So these are what we use as our references. You can look them up online. And then the last thing here, if you want to evaluate nutrition information, so as you hear in the news different things that you want to try to follow, you want to look and see what the sources are for that information. Is it just the news? Is it based on testimonials? Is it based on evidence and scientific studies like you read last chapter? Who are the people that are recommending this? Are they licensed professionals? Are they just getting these documents offline? So make sure you are aware as a consumer of the source of the information that you're getting before you jump in. And then the last part 3 is going to look at labels. So when you're actually at the store or buying something and look at the label at home, how do you know what that label means? So there is a little video I posted. So one of these slides that shows the differences of the newest label. They have made changes since the first label, which was like 25 years ago. So now, as you know, the calories are much larger. They've changed some of the nutrients that are actually posted or have to be posted on the label. So there's some things to kind of learn about the new label. And then if you just look at the label in general, every label must include the identity of the label, how much the weight, what the ingredients are, nutrition information. So we keep focusing on this nutrition information label, but there's other things that have to be. The manufacturer address has to be on the label. So large companies have employees that just look at labels and making sure that they publish them correctly. If you're a consumer and you don't know how to read all these details, it's a lot of information. They have suggested a 520 guide. So if you could just look at these nutrients that are in red, if you see that they're 5% or less, it's probably not a great source of that nutrient. But if it's 20 or above, it would be considered a good source of the particular nutrient. So this is a good source of calcium. It's not a great source of any of the other nutrients that are in red. The ones in yellow are the ones we limit because of sodium, cholesterol, saturated fat. So we're not looking for the 520 rule. We want them to be low. So really that 520 rule only applies to the vitamins and minerals and possibly the fiber. So it makes it complicated. I think the companies have made it difficult to understand labels, but this is a comparison of the two labels. You'll look at that in detail and need to know the differences. And then here's just an overall view of all the label aspects. So you can see that they have to have these different 5 parts, the manufacturer and so forth, but then they also will have health claims. There's a lot more about what is a health claim? What if it says gluten-free? What if it says low fat? What are the specifications that mean there's certain rules you have to follow to label something with these health claims. So you'll read some of the definitions for what health claims are in this chapter. I think that covers it then for the chapter 2. And there's a sample label you'll do for homework and some questions. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks.